Michael James Stewart, or Micky as he's known throughout the cricketing world, is rightly a Surrey legend. Not just because he was a member of the all-conquering side of the 1950s, not because as a close-to-the-wicket catcher he was peerless, nor because in 1971 he led Surrey to the county championship, only to return as manager in the 1980s, winning the NatWest Trophy. No, Micky is a Surrey legend because apart from all those things, the club has quite simply been his life as player, captain, manager, and most recently as president. This, in his own words, is his story.
Bearing in mind I was coming up 7 when war broke out, 39, and the first time I saw inside this place, it was covered in barbed wire because it was going to be some kind of prisoner of war camp. I was on a 58 tram on the top deck, going around there up to Victoria with my mother and father, and I looked in and I saw here. So at the library, up the road at Herne Hill Road, Carnegie Library, I read every single cricket book, I should think, and to see as much as I could read about Surrey, and I knew about Jack Hobbs because we used to have arguments as kids playing across the street who was going to be Jack Hobbs or whose turn it was to be Jack Hobbs. And so that was the start of it really, Charles, and we just played over the park, Ruskin Park, which is just across the way from Herne Hill Road there, and that was it.
So how did you come on the staff? Because you made quite a reputation for yourself as a youngster playing cricket. And in fact, Kent was sniffing around you, weren't they?
Well, that was later, Charles. That was during I'd started national service. But I became a schoolboy member here at the age of 14. And my 2 closest friends at school they were a bit older than me, had been made schoolboy members. It was half a guinea to be a schoolboy member at 14. And I came here, along with my 2 mates, and in the office as it was downstairs there, they said, well, you'll need a proposer and a seconder. I didn't have a clue what that meant, but I said, well, it's a member of the club. And as I came out, there was the captain, E.R.T. Holmes, just coming out from the long room with Bob Gregory, and I said, excuse me, sir, would you be kind enough to sign this form? He said, I don't know you. And I said, oh, I know you, sir, you're captain of Surrey. And he laughed, and he said, I'll sign it. And he turned to Bob Gregory, he said, you sign it too. Well, how that was happened, because he was a professional, and whether he was a member of the club, I don't know. But that's how I became a member on my schoolboy membership. And that was 1948. I've been a member ever since.
And so how did you start? How did you make the transition from just being a member to a player?
Well, I have a hell of a lot to thank a guy, Geoffrey Charney, at Alleyne School, where I went to in Dulwich. And he was tremendous in furthering my career of just playing cricket. And there were always young amateurs games, they were called here, which was really like under 19s in a way. And the places have, by and large, when they'd started again after the war, had been taken up by lads from the major public schools. But he got on and he got me here in the young amateurs side. I got a show, and I did okay. And so that was my first appearance here at the Oval. I was 15, coming up 16, and played 3 years. So that was how I came. And then there was national service, Charles.
So you went off and you did your national service. Then when you came back, you'd obviously decided that professional cricket was what you wanted to do.
It's a long story, because I was going to go the university route via Worcester College, Oxford, as long as the academics were okay. And in my 17th year, everything went very well football-wise. I played in a representative game at Highbury, schoolboy representative game, and finished up signing amateur forms at Arsenal Football Club when Tom Whittaker, it's like 100 years ago, was manager. And then things went very well cricket-wise, and played in the public schools games at Lord's Southern Schools and the rest, and the public schools against combined services game where I played the same time with Colin Cowdery. And everything went well, so I said I want to go the professional route. So
What did your mum and dad say? Because, I mean, being a professional sportsman was a bit of an iffy career in those days, wasn't it?
yes, and again it was overseen by Geoffrey Charnley at Allen School, but my father, to be honest, had always brought me up two things: always be the governor, and never let this, and he put out a £5 note, never let that ruin your life. You do what you want to do and enjoy, and the more you enjoy it, the better you become, and that's a good way of living your life. I mean, my mother particularly wanted me to go to university, but and to say the university route was open, but as long as the academics were okay. And anyway, I went the professional route.
Well, I was going to say, but we just need to clear up this business of the fact that they're trying to lure you the other side of the Medway. They're trying to take you over the county boundary. What's going on?
That came about during whilst I'd played with success for 3 years with the young amateurs. Nobody said anything to me, and I played in a match. I think it was the Royal Engineers. It was not the Army. Royal Engineers against the Yellowhammers, who are old boys. Do you know, Charles, of the leading schools in Kent? And it was captained by Brian Valentine, and I got 100 in each innings in this game, and I played. And Brian Valentine said, I understand you want to play first-class cricket. He said, where do you live? And I said, well, it's in between Camberwell Green, Brixton and Herne Hill. And he said, that's Kent. I said, no, it isn't, it's Surrey. He said, well, what have they said? And I said, they've said nothing. So he said, well, if I have a word, if they don't want you, would you be interested in playing for Kent? And I said, well, I'd consider it. Anyway, the next match later in the week was Army versus the RAF or Navy, whichever one it was, at Lord's, 2-day games they used to be. And I was just putting my pads on, and in came the doyen of secretaries, Brian Caster, with his monocle and what have you, ignoring the notice on the dressing room, only allowed in the dressing room, permission of the captain, came up to me as I was putting my pads on and said, Stewart, what's this? You're wanting to play for Kent? And I said, no. He said, I want to play for Surrey. He said, but you never told me. I said, it's up to you to tell me whether I was good enough. And he said, and by the way, what's this about you wanting to play as a professional? And I said, that's right. He said, but you went to a public school. And he had the contract. He said, anyway, I brought the contract up, and I said, well, this was sort of July, August one year. I wasn't going to start till the following April. And he said, well, I said, well, I'd like to show it to my father first. He said, well, don't take too long. And on it I saw £6 a week. And Ken Barrington, who I got to know, said, if you play first-class cricket when you're doing national service, you'll start on £8 a week. And I said, I'll show it, but shouldn't that £6 a week be £8 a week? Because I played first-class cricket, Mr. Caster. And he said, I hope we're not signing a barrack room lawyer. So that was how I...
So anyway, you signed.
But I didn't sign it until just before the following season, because in Brian Caster's office, it was pre-season was just about to start. April the 15th it was. And I was in his office, contract, and Peter May came in, who I got to know a little bit, playing against Cambridge University in the services games. And he said, oh, just came in to wish you good luck in your career, etc., etc. I said, thanks very much, Peter. Then he said something to Peter. Meanwhile, I'd signed this contract. And put no. He said, "Well, I've got to go now. All the best again, Mickey." And I said, "Thank you, Peter." And Brian Castle said, "You mean Mr. May?"
Because he was
pros had to call amateurs Mr. So there
anyway,
you are.
So anyway, you've signed. You're now a Surrey. You're now a Surrey player. You've been a Surrey member for a while, and you made your debut in '54, and you're straight into that great Surrey side that dominated the championship, 7 wins in the '50s. What was it like going into that dressing room?
Well, I was very lucky to have started in that side. Very, very lucky, because it was such a star-studded side. Arguably, even Bob Appleyard of Yorkshire thought it was the finest county side in the history of the game. He thought it was finer than the Yorkshire sides of the past. But going into the side, it was, for me, it was excellent, because all I had been brought up with my father is that you come first, and second means, precious little. You try your best or so, but you come first. And I think to go into the Surrey side at that time with Stewie Surridge as captain as he was, I believe, and still believe, when county cricket had started, the championship, it's the county championship, only one county, Yorkshire, thought about winning the championship every season. And of course Lancashire felt they wanted to be rivals to that, and that they were their chief rivals. But everywhere else, I think that first-class cricket then was really an extension of school and club cricket, whereby playing in that side, and with Stewie as he was as captain, was the first real competition to Yorkshire. And I think that statistically and historically, it's shown that it was and has been.
So as you look back over the years at that '50s side, what made them so good? Why were you head and shoulders above everybody else? Was it just the personalities within the dressing room and the talent within the dressing room?
We had, yes, we had a star-studded attack with the new ball, Bedser Loader, and followed by Laker Lock, and they got wickets at a strike rate of in between them every 6 balls or 8 balls that they bowled, and when we were winning the championship, the average cost per wicket in that time was something like 14. A wicket every week just cost 14 runs.
There must have been some very boring games, Mickey, if you were dominating that well.
Some people felt that way. We went through a season, which you mentioned, was it 55, where we won pretty well 50% of the game in 2 days. And of course, and the pitches here were prepared, and it was by and large, the ball had to turn by tea time on the second day of a 3rd day match at the latest. And that's how the pitches responded to spin. They respond, the swing of Bedser and Loader, Alec Bedser with his leg cutters as well. And we had a responsive surface most of the time to play on. But during that time, those bowlers got more wickets away from the oval than what they did at the oval.
And how did the batsmen survive on these surfaces? Because it's all very well to have wickets that are loaded in favour of the bowlers, but on the batting side of the dressing room,
they were bowler friendly. Bernard Constable, who was such a great character, and probably I learnt more from him about first-class cricket more quickly than anybody else, said, "You mark my words," he said, when it was all over, we'd won the 7, or he played in all 7, and he said, "In years to come, the only names you'll ever hear will be Laker Lock, Bedser Loader and May." We poor batsmen who had to fight. I mean, the policy was, Charles, that when we played here, then we had our batting tempo had to be that you had to get 300 by 10 if we batted first, 300 by 10 to 6. And that was the way that we batted. Sometimes that was achieved, sometimes we got out for 140.
I wanted to ask you about Stuart Surridge in particular as captain, because if you talk about great Surrey captains, he is always going to be up there. Now, he never played for England, But what made him so special? Was he just the most dynamic leader of men imaginable?
He was the ideal leader of that side because it was an average age, high average age because of the war. Half the side had played with him before the war had started in second team cricket when he played as an amateur, and they liked him as a person, and he was physically aggressive, you might say. He was very loud on the field, all within his side, not one. He never sledged anybody, did Stewie, of the opposition, that was not on in those days either. And he chose, he made one or two mistakes here and there, how he would address and get the best out of every player. Like with Lockie, if he pulled one down short and it got square cut or something like that, Stewie would let him know what he felt about that. And because by and large, you say it was boring, when a boundary was, in some matches, when we conceded a boundary, there was almost a committee meeting as to how a boundary had been conceded.
So how did he handle did he handle people differently?
So he would give Lockie stick to gee him up and what have you, as against with Jim Laker. Jim always wanted somebody out at cowshot, no matter number 11 in or the finest batsman in the world, always wanted somebody out at cowshot corner as an off spinner. To stop in the release of getting in when the ball was doing it, and the catches were all around here. And Stewart, we might be, winning the game easy or the last two, and Stewie would call the man in and say, "Come in here, we'll have another one round here." And Stewie said, "No." Jim would say, "No, I want another one out there." He said, and he said, "No." He said, and Jim would just put the ball down behind the stump and said, "If you want him out there, then get somebody else to bowl with this."
Blimey. There was one game in particular I wanted to ask you about, because it is always cited as the most extraordinary game. The 1954 game against Worcestershire, which, although there was a bit of rain around on day one, but you in fact won it within a day's play. And the scores are Worcestershire 25 all out, Lock 5 for 2. And then this is the bit I like the best. Surrey 92 for 3 declared after 24 overs. You were one of the 3 out for 11. What's going on in the dressing room when you bowled somebody out for 25 and you've got 92? So your lead isn't huge, and the captain says, "That's enough, boys, in you come." I mean, what did you look at him and say, "You're mad"?
Well, Peter May, I'll tell you, that there was not too much. It was a huge rainy year, rainy summer, and the play had been delayed. The start of the game had been delayed, and I don't know there was too much play on the first day at all. I'm not sure when, but as you say, we bowled them out, and Stewie said, "What's the weather forecast? What's it going to be?" And on the second day, when it happened, and the sun was out, and the wicket had been absolutely soaked and it had dried, and the more the game went on, the more the ball was going through the top and going up in the air. And anyway, Kenny Barrington was out there with Peter May, and I think Peter May had just hit a boundary and it was over. And Kenny called it, "I think he's declared. I think the captain's declared." To Peter May, "What, declare?" Well, as you said. He said, "Yeah." And there was Stewie on the balcony up here with the dressing room, calling them in. He said, he didn't have too many gin and tonics with his lunch, did he? Anyway, we went out there and bowled them out again for, what was it, 40?
Laker 4, Bedser 3, game over in 89 overs. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Extraordinary.
So that was it, yeah.
And we ought to talk about your fielding, especially to the spinners, because your reputation in county cricket was that there was nobody as good as you as a close to the wicket catcher, certainly around the short leg area. In 57, you took 77 catches in the season, including a world record 7 in one innings against Northants. So just talk to me about life at short leg to Laker and Lock.
Well, Charles, to be honest, the game was very different then, as far as now, with people sweeping, reverse sweeping, regardless of where the ball is and how players have worked at that, become so efficient at that, then there were very few good, strong sweepers that they hit it. So, I mean, Lockie, for example, it was very few people swept Lockie the way that he bowled aggressively anyway, where he came from, the pace that he bowled it, and left arm swing going against the sweep that way. The reverse sweep had never been thought of, or what. So it was a lot less dangerous than what you would look now. But the main thing was that the bowlers, the control of the ball and the amount of revolutions, they were so accurate. Same with Alec Bedser bowling and fielding there. I fielded there, I first started in the middle of 54, and it was August 56 before a ball was struck past me at bat pad, past my left ear, because Alec had pulled one down short. Now that sounds ridiculous, but that was literally, it was Reg Simpson, Nottinghamshire, and that was the control that they all had, all the four bowlers.
So you felt safe there, and the fact you didn't have a helmet?
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Barrington and Peter May had slipped these. I never thought about being hit.
In 57...
I didn't wear a box either.
Didn't you?
Which Jim Swanton...
And you still had two children. That's an extraordinary performance.
I think Jim Swanton, I don't know who told him, I think he wrote something saying, to the words to the extent, is that being fair to Mrs. Stewart or something like that?
There are three children, I should have said, shouldn't I? In 1957, Peter May took over the captaincy. Was there a big difference? I mean, did it feel like something had changed from the Surridge era to the May era?
It was a lot quieter. But if you said who was the harder man between the two of them in competing, in all circumstances, I would say that Peter May was.
Why?
How about that? Because Stewie, for all his aggression and being loud and the way that he was aware of things like, no matter how much you played, everybody's going to drop a sky now and again, or everybody's going to make a mistake or whatever. And I think, and Peter found it more difficult to be a bit more forgiving at the time. At the time, it would be, and he was a hard competitor. You know, top drawer on that side. But he had, again, he still had that attack to handle, and it wasn't too difficult.
I was going to say, I mean, do you think all the cricket you've seen over the years that rather too much is made of captaincy? Basically, if you've got the equivalent of a nuclear weapon in your armoury, which the West Indies, of course, had with the four fast bowlers, or if you have Shane Warne, Glenn McGrath, or in your day in the 50s, you had that anybody could captain that sort of side. Is that something you sort of feel, or is there more to it than that?
No, because in our star-studded side, with that particular attack at the time, you needed, and those people, and the age that they were, you needed the right sort of captain to get the best out of them all. Because bear in mind, there would be occasions at the Oval and around the country that there was a pitch that would allow any of the four bowlers to get 6 for 20 odd, but only one could bowl at that end, say. Perhaps the other end wasn't doing it. You had to keep the other three happy. And Stewie, so that was another part of captaincy. And Stewie was good at that.
The other people we've not talked about really in any depth are of course, the Bedser twins. They're as much a part of the 1950s stories than anybody else in the Surrey lineup. When did you first come across them?
Just walking in the dressing room for the first time to speak to as my first day as a professional here. And I said, and Alec was in the dressing room. He said, "Oh," I said something, and I addressed him as Mr. Bedser. And he said, "What's this Mr. Bedser business?" He said, I'm a professional, same as you. You call me Alec. And Eric just went, yeah.
They were obviously twins, and a lot of people struggle to see the difference between the two of them. How long did it take you to work out which was which?
Amazing. Very quickly, like a week or so, that was all. They ceased. I'd say they ceased to look alike. Obviously, they were identical, but I don't know. I mean, they were different in personality and they were different in physical movement as well. Alec was that bit more athletic or so, but once you were with them all the time, you didn't see the difference.
And of the two of them, was one more dominant than the other? Was Alec always the dominant one?
Dominant. Between the two of them, no. I mean, when Alec was bowling and Eric might be at mid-on or something like that, and he would say, "Oh, get Lockie a bit wider," or to Alec, and then say, "No, he's all right there. Or get the third slip, get him over the gully or something like that." And so "Oh, shut up! Who's fucking bowling?" And you or me and all that.
They had a reputation in later life of being a little on the grumpy side. Were they fairly grumpy during their playing days?
Well, if you call it grumpy, no. I mean, there was a difference between Alec and Eric. You would say that perhaps Alec smiled more, and bearing in mind they both bowled the same until they were mid-teens or something like that, and they tossed up who was going to change. They both bowled the same as Alec. I mean, this is what they say, but as I say, Eric wasn't as athletic as Alec. But the thing is with Eric, that when you think that he got 800, nearly 900 wickets as a second spinner, and coming in when Jim Laker was in the Test match or not playing, and he still got 800 at something like, I don't know, 20 apiece, or he had huge hands and spun it.
Statistically, it would look like 1955 was your best year because you won 23 of the 28 games, championship games played. Is that the way you saw it? Was that the greatest year for that side?
I would say 57, because then Kenny Barrington and myself were then experienced players, and there was still the efficiency of the attack. There was nothing. I would say 57, and I know it was the year after Stewie Surridge had finished, but I would say the 57 side was the best side, and I think we'd won the championship by, early August or something like that. I know it was down at Weston-super-Mare. We won it because Kenny Barrington and I were still doing the bags then as well. And Kenny had played for England.
I was just looking at the stats over the 7 years. I played 196 games and you won 121 and only lost 28 games. You lost 28 games in 7 years. They are just unbelievable statistics. Nobody will ever top them.
No, well, especially now. I mean, the game has changed so much anyway, but no, you'll be right. And I think things like that made Bob Appleyard, of all people, who I got to know in the latter part of his life, said without a doubt that must be the best side.
What was the feeling like in 1959, where after 7 years of dominance, suddenly Surrey haven't won the title? Was it like there'd been a thunderclap over the? I mean, was it
the dressing room was absolutely. When we were playing Middlesex here, and Yorkshire won at Hove. It would have been, again, rain-affected matches, and Sussex, I think, they declared to leave Yorkshire something, and Middlesex were never going to do that to us here. And when we'd learnt that Sussex had declared, and Yorkshire chasing, I think they'd hit 200 or something like that, they'd got the runs. It was like it was absolute morgue in the dressing room. It was the first. I mean, like Kenny Barrington and I, it was the first time we played a season without winning the championship.
So you took over as captain in 1963. There has been a changing of the guard by now. The Mays and the McIntyres are nearly done. The Bedses are gone. Locke's gone. Laker's gone. How did it feel being the man in charge, knowing the great history through the 50s and also knowing that sort of the weapons that your predecessors had had are no longer going to be available to you?
Again, it just came out of the blue. I mean, I'd always went on the field, and many people do this. In your own mind, you're captaining the side all the time as the game progresses. You're thinking, what are we going to do now, and who would you bring on, and this and that. And Peter May used to speak to me quite a bit. What do you think, and this and that. So, but when I was asked to captain the side, I was standing in for him up at Trent Bridge. It just came out the blue. We were in the nets down there, and I was called in here and in the office. Said, "We want you to captain the side." But it just came out the blue. I couldn't believe it. And so that was my introduction to it. And bearing in mind, then as I was a professional, you had to be an amateur to captain the side anyway. Then 1963 coincided with the year that there was no amateurs and pros, everybody were players. So, but I was the first professional captain. So I was aware what was about and coming through. So I never thought, that they're used to winning the championship. I was just concerned that they progressed as they should do as soon as possible. But again, the game was different and people were different. Although we were winning the championship, there, to say, very few sides ever thought about winning the championship. And so when I started, and it wasn't long before we had Roger Harmon and Pat Pocock. Pat made his debut at 17. Roger was 19 or something like that. And they were good. They were good. But people then started making comparisons if we didn't win a game or we were fifth in the championship or something like that. They were comparing two bowlers in their teenage years, or perhaps Roger might have been early 20s then, with an experienced Jim Laker and Tony Locke.
So were the 50s and that triumph, that period, did they become a bit of a millstone that everybody was saying, you're not as good as the 50s?
No, not. You got those in. They'd suddenly, somebody may say something about, or it might be written about, comparing Percy Pocock with Jim Laker. You just dismiss it really because it was stupid.
And what was your approach as captain? You'd served under Stewie Surridge, you'd served under Peter May. Did you consciously try and do things differently, or did you try and imitate them? How did it happen?
Well, having been brought up in a time where we did nothing other than attack with both ball and bat, generally, when I say with the bat, we had this target to get 300 by 10 to 6 on there. That's what I've been used to and attempted to put into operation, and probably I attacked a bit too much because the people I had doing the business with the ball were nothing like, which I've just described, the attack that was out there. But we were okay. And then John Edrich was now on the scene with runs all the time. Kenny Barrington, of course, was there, and so we weren't the worst side, you might say, but with the pitches here changing totally and becoming very, very bland. I used to talk with Closey when we used to play Yorkshire here, another draw or something like that. He said, "You'll never win the championship if you can have the pitches like that."
The period that you were captain of the side through the 60s, the game was changing, and overseas players started to come into English county cricket. Your overseas players were was the Pakistan leg spinner Intercab. You stuck with him for a very long time. Did you at any stage, while other people were signing big names that were making a huge impact, think we're a bit underpowered here?
No. We had, if you look at the attack overall, and I've been get a bit confused in years, bearing in mind that in that time we had, with the new ball, we had Arnold, Jackman, Willis. When I first...
Sydenham would have been around?
I was going to say David Sydenham at the start.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was going to ask about David Gibson. I don't know whether David Gibson...
He'd have been around in the 60s.
Yes, as well. Were all good bowlers, top bowlers they were. And always here has been the idea, and go back to the 50s, you couldn't do it anyway, the way the game was set up as far as get other players in from outside. But the idea was always that we would have a Surrey side. And it would come from Surrey, and it'd be representative of the cricket that was played in the county. You know, when we were winning the championship in Yorkshire, we loved it, the fact that chatting in the bar afterwards, that our players had come from club cricket where there was no league cricket whatsoever. Saturday, Sunday cricket, there was all-day cricket on the Sunday. And we had stuffed the side who had this competitive league cricket that was up there.
Well, you did have Jim Laker, who I think he was a Yorkshireman.
But he had actually come down to play at Catford Cricket Club with Barclays Bank, who he was with. So he didn't come from the league. Yeah, there was he, and there was Tom Clark, who was Bedfordshire. All the rest of us were all Surrey.
In the early 60s, you also had your Test career, of course. Was that a huge moment for you to get selected to play for England?
My Test career, be it a short one, well, yes, very much so. I mean, that is the ultimate ambition, to represent your country, and it was. I missed out twice narrowly, I'm told, by Doug Insall, particularly because I got to know that by a feather a couple of times, one going to Australia. And evidently, in my first, was it 54-5, when Colin Cowdery went to Australia with success, I was talked about evidently there. But playing my first Test match for England against Pakistan, I had got, just after I think I got a double century, it was the match, I got a double century here against Essex, and was on the field when it was announced, when Jeff Puller was injured and had pulled out of the Test match, and I came in, played my first Test match against Pakistan at Lord's. It's the only time in my career where nerves affected me physically. Not so much of playing, but as I walked down the steps to open my innings with Colin Cowdery, I knew that there were umpteen people who had all had a huge effect and support of my career to where I was then. And for how I survived the first, in foot movement, 3 or 4 overs, I don't know. Anyway, I did. And that's the only time that nerves have affected me out in the middle. So
let's talk about the end of your playing career, which, of course, the great triumph was the championship of 1971. Did you, going into that season, think that you had a really good chance? Was it a surprise that you dominated, or that you were able to go on and win it, or what was? Just give me the sort of the build-up.
No, I mean, we always started a season looking to win the championship, and there were, when we had the side, I thought we had every chance of winning it in 64, and I hooked Price in. I missed 5 matches, and I still think if I hadn't missed those 5 matches, we'd have won the championship. It was when Worcester were on. At least I'd say we'd have won it. We'd have certainly been there or thereabouts. And whilst we had it was Pocock and Harman as they were getting in, and sadly then Roger went backwards, and there was Pocock and and Intercarb, and we always had the Jackman, the Arnold, and Willis coming through.
Well, Willis, the 71 was he'd just come back off the Ashes tour, which he'd been picked as a surprise pick, substituting for Alan Ward.
Came in.
So he was a 19-year-old who gave you real pace.
Yeah, yes, he did, and he had, but he didn't have a body that could maintain that. Just coming into the game, and but he had everything. But I think there were two things. One, people got into his ear. If you got Jackman, Arnold, the other one, etc. Are you going to play regularly? What about moving and this and that? And I think he came, and there was a pay structure here, whereby you got so much when you arrive, then when you got your second 11 cap, and then your county cap, and that was not to be disturbed. I think Stewie Sage was chairman then of cricket, and anyway, I think I went berserk actually, because I said, you realise we're losing a top bowler for the sake of a $5 a week. Anyway, they didn't, and he left. Yeah.
But just tell me the story of that 71 season, because
well, we would have set off in pre-season, have been preparing to have a campaign where we would win the championship, and I can't think the flow of the season in the first half of the season, but we went through a dodgy period where we didn't play so well, and with I think we had 7 matches to play, and I called them all in here, and I said, look, we have got to look to win 5 out of these 7, no messing. And we had, where we were going to play the away matches, we knew we had a fair chance of getting a result. Anyway, that's what we did. I think we might have won 5 on the trot. I can't remember.
You won 5 on a trot.
Oh, we did win 5 on the trot.
In August.
Yeah.
Including Yorkshire by an innings, which would have been particularly...
We actually, although I'd said, that's what we're looking to do, it doesn't usually work out like that. And then we should have won the championship here. We couldn't get the last one out.
That was in Glamorgan.
So we had to go down to Southampton and to get the necessary points.
Well, with 2 games to go, you've actually had a bit of a bonus, because Warwickshire, who were your big opponents that season, they finished for some reason or other, they finished their programme, and you still had 2 matches to play.
Yeah.
So you knew what they'd got, and you knew that you needed 14 points for the title.
Yeah, absolutely, with 2 games to play. So
your penultimate game was against Glamorgan.
Yeah.
But you couldn't get the last wicket, which would have just done the job.
Yeah.
So you went down to what was it? Down to Southampton, needing 6 points to take the title. That must have been a nervy 3 days, was it?
Well, to begin with, Charles, did we get? There were batting bonus points, and so we obviously set out to get maximum batting bonus points, and we were going very well. John and I opened, I think, because I dropped myself down to 3 for Mike Edwards, but I can't remember. Anyway, we were going well, and there was a clatter of wickets. So instead of having maximum bonus points, we didn't. So we still needed to get 2 bowling points or whatever it was, and we did. And the final point was caught long, bowled into cab. That was Richard Gilliott. I still remember it.
Can you see it to this day?
Yeah, I always remember that. Yeah.
What do you remember of it? What can you see if you?
Well, it was chaotic, really, because first of all, I had to make the decision of making Robin Jackman, who'd been an absolute stalwart all the way through, 12th man, because I thought Bob Willis the pitch was not going to, but he would get that extra pace, and bearing in mind that their opening batsmen was Barry Richards and Gordon Greenwich, so they weren't short of class there. So I had to tell Robin that, and he was 12th man, and he would, after the initial shock, he was fine. And I didn't know that at whenever it was lunchtime, he'd been to the umpires and said, if we get, or when we get the point, could I bring champagne onto the field to celebrate winning the championship? And for some reason, the umpires said that's all right by us. So when we got this wicket, everybody's, and suddenly Jackman appears with these, along with somebody else and trays, the champagne was poured on the field. I thought it was totally out of order because we were on somebody else's ground anyway. People had come to watch cricket, not drink champagne. Anyway, they came on, there was a delay, and I was down there, and it's a very small ground, and my wife, Sheila, was there, and I knew where she was, and she was, anyway, I called her on and gave her a kiss halfway to the boundary. And so anyway, it all finished. But Jim Swanton wrote, obviously didn't think too much of it, and I could understand that as well, of the champagne coming on the field, and said, and then a young lady appeared, reputedly to be the captain of Surrey's wife.
There is just one thing I'm slightly struggling with here, Micky, and that is you thought that bringing champagne onto the field was out of order, but you thought it was perfectly all right for your wife to invade the pitch and you to start kissing her.
Well, I was halfway to the boundary and everything was going on, so that was, I knew what she'd had to put up with over the years.
So how did that win in '71 compare to the 50s? Was it sweeter in many ways?
Yes, from my point of view, obviously, there I was, like the first time of it, I was the junior member in the side, and here I was as captain, and every year had looked to win the championship. And bearing in mind, you know, my father all the time saying, you've got to be first, second is nowhere. And so it was very special. What I did miss, actually, in my inexperience or so, that when we came off the field and went to bat again, and Stewie Surridge, who was chairman of cricket, said, "Oh, you won't be opening the innings. You've got to do interviews and what have you." And I said, "I can't. We want to still win this match." Anyway, they'd arranged this and that, and so I didn't open the innings with John in the second innings. And I had to do interviews down the other end of the ground and all the rest of it, which sounds absolutely stupid now, doesn't it? And we finished up losing the match, which I have never forgotten either. I mean, to win the championship and lose the match was
and in fact, you only won the title because you had, I think, more wins or something like that.
Yeah.
Which was a little frustrating because you'd have liked to have won it outright.
Well, yeah, but I mean, within the competition, that was fair enough. Especially, and later it was quite good because I got quite friendly with MJK and AC Smith. They were always moaning about that. So.
The next year, '72, was your last year. Did you know it was time to go?
I was going to finish 70. I wanted to finish in '71. I was going to finish that year, having won the championship. And I said to Stewie that what my intention were, because things had gone so well for me at Slassinger's, and they wanted me to fit.
Who you were working for in the winter, were you?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And things had gone well for me, and I'd said to John Edrich about I was going to finish. So I was thinking seriously about finishing, and then he said, "No, I'm not interested in doing this."
So John didn't want to be captain?
Not then, no. So Stewie came to me and Alf Gover and said, "Look, we want you to do it another year." And I said, "Oh." Anyway, went on. Stewie and Alf said, "Well, if you carry another year, we give you a testimonial." Well, then that made up my mind because it wasn't the biggest money-making game to play then. And so I played another year.
Did you regret not sticking to your original decision? Did you enjoy 72?
No. And it was the wrong decision, because having strived all that time to win the championship, and I wasn't the same person, and I missed matches, and I was hopeless with a bat. I didn't. It was the wrong decision anyway, and they should have really just said right, and let me go.
But if you hadn't played in 72, you wouldn't have played in that second extraordinary match, which we ought to talk about, the game at Eastbourne against Sussex, where it looked like Sussex were strolling to victory with 3 overs left, 1 down, needing 18 to win, so a runner ball, and they ended up 9 down, and Pocock had taken a world record 7 wickets in 11 balls. What do you remember of that extraordinary climax? That's got to be the most bizarre end to a game of cricket you ever played in.
Well, I can. The one thing I remember, it was at Eastbourne on the Saffron's ground, as you say, and I declared leaving them 200 and a bit, 205, I think it was, and I chased a ball to the boundary off Percy. And it went to where, again, friends from West Surrey Cricket Club were sat on the grass, really. And I went to go, and they said, "Oh, we lost this one then, Mick," as they used to call me. I said, "No, not on your life." As I was picking up, I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll have a 5 on it, we don't lose." And why I said it, I don't know. And anyway, the ball went in, and
3 overs to go. They needed 18 off 18.
Yeah.
2 overs to go. They're down to 189 for 4. So they now need 16 off 12. So we're saying 3 wickets in that over.
I had to decide whether to bowl into another over. And I thought, well,
you went for Jackman.
I bowled him. Sorry.
No, you went for Jackman. Jackman bowled the penultimate over.
Oh, Jackman. Well, it went for 10 or.
He went for 11.
11, did it?
Yeah,
I
good decision to go with him then.
Yeah. So it must have been Into, I think, was bowling before then.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I know it was Pocock bowled the third out.
Yeah.
Then Jackman bowled the penultimate and went for 11.
Yeah.
So it's now 200 for 4 with 5 needed off 6 balls. Yeah. And they end up 202 for 9. And the captain is saying, well, they had it all planned. You should have gone a bit earlier and you'd have won the game.
I won a 5-er because we didn't lose it. I didn't say we'd win it.
And as you look back over those years, there must have been a tear in your eye as you walked off for the last time, was there?
Oh, yes. Yes, very much so. The family were here, all of them, Sheila and the 3 children. And yes, it was. Yeah. Naturally, obviously. I mean, it's been my life, but where we are now is the important part of my life. And I'm thinking the first time I saw it was from a 58 tram and playing cricket across the street in Ruskin Park. And what's happened here is incredible. I'm very, very lucky.
Final question for you. When I was looking at all your stats ahead of this interview, I was looking at the runs you scored, the hundreds you scored for Surrey, the catches you held close to the wicket, the world record and all that sort of stuff. But there was one stat which stood out more than anything else. First class wickets, 1. And you see, it's always the same, isn't it, for a batsman? You talk about their bowling feats and they immediately has a big smile on their face. Who was the one?
Charles, I'm pleased you brought it up, because if you hadn't, I would have done. That wicket was Brian Taylor, captain of Essex, caught long, bowled Stewart, 49. He's my 1 wicket. And sadly, he's no longer with us. Right to his dying day, I might say, I was still reminding him he was my 1 wicket, because I'd known him since we were both 14.
And so what were the circumstances?
The game was dead, obviously, because if I put myself on the bowl, my team would have walked off probably if there'd been anything on the game. And it was just, we were biding out time before we came off the field. Whether it was rain affected or anyway, the game was dead. That's how I came to be bowling at him.
And he just nicked it.
Yes, he nicked it, he turned. Left-hander, you see. Way.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for talking to us, and thanks for sharing so many great Surrey memories.
My pleasure. Thank you.